Welcome, everybody. This is Patrick Snow, host of the Patrick and Mary Unstoppable Author Interview Series, where we interview inspiring authors, speakers, coaches, consultants from all over the world to help you get more time, more money, more freedom, more health, more love, more happiness in life. And today we've got a special guest that's going to help us on the financial front with regards to budgeting. He's a longtime friend and an incredible man. His name is Frank Reed. So get ready to get your socks knocked off of you, if I could say that correctly. And by the way, if you want to follow along online, you can visit his website at bottomlineministries.org. Again, bottomlineministries.org. Frank Reed and I have been friends for maybe 15 years. He's been to my home in Maui with his beautiful wife, Randy, and we've run around being tourists together. We've had a lot of fun, and he's also been very instrumental back in the early days when I was going through some challenging times in my life, and we spent many hours on the phone. So I'm so thankful for our special guest today. I'm going to read his bio verbatim because I want you to know all about Frank Reed. He is a highly insightful and unique financial coach, author of the book In God We Trust, Dollars and Cents, and a professional speaker with an innovative approach to financial freedom and coaching. He empowers people with profound truth that debt is not your destiny. He introduces you to a new way of looking at wisdom of the ages. Frank has shared his knowledge over the years at home and abroad in Kampala, Uganda, and Ireland, and throughout the United States. Some of his noteworthy clients include Chamber of Commerce's, the Virginia Fatherhood Campaign, colleges and universities, as well as local and international faith-based organizations. Frank has more than 25 years experience in management, shipbuilding, planning, production, control, engineering, coordination, personnel, scheduling, materials, resolving personal conflicts, and customer, vendor, and Navy grievances. He has provided insightful leadership and customer service. He has served as a review expert and panel member for the National Fatherhood Initiative, Blacks in Government, the Seattle chapter, Department of Labor, deciding the distribution of federal funding up to several $1 million in grants funded and grants awarded. Born and raised in Southeast Virginia, Frank now resides in Bremerton, Washington with his family. So please join me in welcoming author, speaker, coach, financial expert, Frank Reed. How you doing,
Thank you, Patrick. That's probably the best introduction I've ever paid for.
So thrilled to have you on our show today. This is the second time we've had you on, and we had such good feedback the last time. We're so excited to have you on again. So before we begin, take us back to the beginning. I'm trying to figure out, I know Mary West was instrumental in connecting us, but talk about how we first met way back in the day and how and where that was.
Well, what had happened was, it was way back in the day, as you said, and I had just written my book, and I'd sent it off to the printer, and I knew nothing at all about marketing a book. I didn't know anything about writing a book. I wish I had met you first before I went with my publisher, but a friend of mine in the insurance agency, she was an insurance agent, and she told me about this publishing coach that she'd heard of and said he was a really awesome speaker. His name was Patrick Snow, and he was speaking in the next town over in Poulsbo and at the fire station, and I should come. So I said, sure, because I need to talk to somebody of how to market this book because I've got 1,000 books coming. I had no idea what to do with them. And so I went and I listened to your presentation, and it was amazing. And then I met Mary because she was your marketing director. And so I talked with Mary, and I set up an appointment to meet with you to find out what I should do next. And one of the things I want to say before we go any further, when we met with you that first time, my wife and I, we sat down with you for 90 minutes, and I learned more about book publishing in 90 minutes from you than I did with 2 years with my publisher. So I just wanted to say that.
Wow. Well, thank you. And say hello to Randy. She's an awesome woman. And I just treasure our friendship so very much. I'm so proud of all that you've accomplished. Love what you're doing. And I think now more than ever, we've got rampant inflation. We've got people's, money running out before the month does, maybe now more than ever. And I think people, you go to Costco and you used to be able to get a couple grocery cart full of food for Costco for $250, and now it's $750. So everything financially in the last 2, 3, 4 years has become more challenging. So this is one of the reasons I was super excited about chatting with you. But before we dive into all that, I want to ask you about your youth. Were you one of those kids and your mom and dad said, hey, you can have anything you want, you just got to pay for it yourself? Did you work, mowing grass, shoveling snow? Talk about your youth and your formative years and how and where and when this concept of money and saving and tithing and, that you have control of your money. When were you first introduced to it? Was it playing Monopoly? Take us back to the early years of Frank Reed, and I want to get into your brain and learn about that.
Well, my early years are very different than, I didn't have a conventional childhood. My mom died when I was 5. And so I had 2 older brothers and a sister. And I lived in Virginia and they both lived in New Jersey. So my brother lived in Philadelphia at that time. My sister lived in New Jersey. And so I was only 5 years old. So when I turned 6, my brother was married. So he brought me to live with him in Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, I got a job at 7 years old, shining shoes at the local bar right down the street. And of course, I wasn't supposed to be in a bar. But what they would do is I would shine shoes outside of the bar. And then when the police came, they'd bring me in the bar. When the police came, they'd put me back outside of the bar. And when the detectives left, they'd bring me back in again. And it was like a big Italian family all looking out for me. And I would make, when I was like 9 years old, I was making as much money as some adults made on the weekend. And so from there, and then I've always had jobs. And then when I turned 10, my brother had to send me back home to my dad. And it was just me, my dad, and my brother. And so we learned how to cut grass, mow grass, take care of a lawn, take care of the garden. My dad had this huge garden that he grew everything in. That's why I don't own a garden today. When people ask me, what's my garden? I tell them Safeway and QFC. Because I don't want to see a garden. 90-degree heat in August in Virginia out there, when they had Roundup, people talk about Roundup. Well, I was my dad's Roundup. I would go out in that garden and pull up all the grass from around the corn and the potatoes and all that. And he would be out fishing. And here I am in 90-degree heat in August out there pulling up grass. So that's why I don't have a garden today. But go for it.
I was just gonna say, I had no idea about the shoe shining thing. I've learned something new about you. So what did you make when you shined a pair of shoes back in the day? How much did you charge for that?
So that's 1960, it was 25 cents. And most people gave me $1.
Wow. So every time a buck.
Yes. And so, and then the weekend, after I worked the weekend, I would go at 9 years old, I would go to the store and buy school clothes.
I was going to say, what did you do with all your money?
Mostly bought school clothes, and what I didn't buy school clothes with, I ate it.
Yeah.
Because as a kid, I had a sweet tooth.
Yeah. Wow.
And
so you went to the corner candy store quite a bit, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, I learned to be an entrepreneur. I would walk all over the streets of Philadelphia and I would just shine shoes. I had my little kit. I'd stop. They put their foot up. I shine the shoes. They give me the 25 cents, the 50 cents, the $1. And that's what I would do. That's how I made my money.
Wow. And you know what? That skill set that you learned at a good age, I would just like to ask you, how has that impacted the rest of your life with regards to understanding the power of money, making money, saving money, that kind of thing? Well,
as long as my dad always said this, if you're not going to do something right, don't do it at all. But the option, not doing it at all, was never an option with him.
Yeah.
So you always had to do it right. And so that stuck with me for many, many years, is to do a job well, to do it right, and to be the best you can at what you do. And when you're the best you can at what you do, you never have to worry about the job, or you have to worry about money.
Wow. And then, as I understand, if I remember correctly, you were a pretty talented, football player back in the day. Talk about that, and then talk about how you ended up joining the Navy.
Well, I never joined the Navy, but I worked building ships for over 30 years. So I guess you could say I kind of joined them.
So were you a
But,
contractor in the Navy, a contractor for the Navy?
Well, actually, Newport News Shipbuilding is the largest privately owned shipbuilder in the world in Newport News, Virginia. When you
Okay.
see the super carriers on TV, just about all super carriers are built in Newport News, Virginia.
Okay.
And just about every Nimitz class, from the Nimitz itself up to the Ronald Reagan, I've had something to do with. And also Trident submarines, as well as um, Trident submarines and fast attack submarines. I worked on the first Nimitz, the first Trident, the first fast attack. I told my son that one day. He said, "Dad, do you realize a lot of people never say that?" And I never thought about it. And when I came out here to Bremerton, Washington, I was on the first SSBN conversion from Trident submarine ballistic to where they put the mini submarines on the submarines. That was the first one. And it was the Ohio, and I helped build the Ohio. And so I also helped with the first conversion. So that's four brand new that never been done before.
Wow. So, but all of this time, you were not an enlisted Navy person. You were a private contractor. So
Private contractor.
you were independent, and you never actually joined the Navy. You actually just worked on Navy ships.
Correct.
Wow. And then during this time, you got into budgeting and allocating millions of dollars of funds. Talk about that experience, and how and where did that kind of further prepare you for this, writing this book on money and debt and all that good stuff?
Well, for many years, I started off as a pipe fitter and working on what they call the deck plates down on the ships. And I just wanted to work up in the office, and an opportunity came open for me to transition from being an hourly worker to becoming a salary worker in planning. So I applied for it, and my general foreman really didn't want me to have the position because he and I didn't see eye to eye at all. And so one night they had a really tough job down on, it was a fast attack submarine, was brand new, and it had to go to sea trial the next morning. Well, in order to go to sea trial the next morning, they had a piece of pipe it had a couple of bends in it, and they couldn't find another piece to replace it in the entire United States. And if they didn't get it out the next morning, they would lose several millions of dollars, because they didn't meet what we call the key event, the schedule. They brought the pipe to me, and I maneuvered. I worked on this pipe all night long. And then I did something that I shouldn't really say on this interview. I did something that wasn't quite right. Let me put it that way.
You were
And
creative. You got
creative. I was creative, and I took it down and I put it on the ship, and I got it lined up where it would work. But at that time, the Navy inspector came up right before I was going to have the welder weld it and make it permanent. And he tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Can I see that?" Because there's a procedural thing with a flange. A flange is just, it's like a round plate with bolt holes in it where you connect to another flange that holds the pipe in place. But it's got to be perfect, because if it's not perfect, then when the welder welds it, it'll crack. And this went on the SSTG steam generators that makes the actual submarine move. So you don't want that cracking, especially when you're underwater. And so anyway, so I told him to tack it, put small tacks around it, and I was getting ready to weld it. And so when the Navy personnel said, the inspector says, "Let me see it," I knew right then and there I was fired, because I knew what I had done.
Yeah.
I knew right then to make it work, because that was the only way to get it to work. And I knew right then and there I was fired. And so he He took the pipe, it was about 4 foot long, and he flipped it over and he shined the light down in it. And he looked at it and he handed it back to the welder and said, weld it. And when he said that, I was more in shock than anybody else on that entire boat. I grabbed the pipe, I said, let me see that. And I looked in it and the pipe was absolutely perfect.
Wow.
And I know today, for many years later, I realized that was God at work, because there was no way for that pipe to be perfect, but it was absolutely perfect. And the next day, when I came into work, the job that my general foreman was preventing me from getting, they walked up to me and said, when you come in tomorrow, I want you to go into planning.
Yeah.
And that's how I got the planning job.
Wow. Hopefully they gave you a percentage of those monies that you saved there as well. So
I'm still waiting on that, but they didn't
yeah,
send- they
still
haven't
waiting
sent
on
it
that.
yet. Yeah.
Wow. So whether you're paying your financial, power bill, cell bill, cable bill, water bill, or moving hundreds of millions of dollars around for these ships, is budgeting all the same process? It's just one time, it just depends on how many commas and how many zeros are in place. So talk a little bit about budgeting and the power of budgeting.
Well, budgeting is like you made a good point. It doesn't matter about the number, it's the process. You see, whether you have 1 zero or 10 zeros, the most important part is where does the comma start? And where's the decimal? That determines how much you have. But the process remains the same. If you don't have a budget, you do not have control of your money. And if you don't have control of your money, it's going to, I call it leaking out. You put water in a bucket and you're walking along and you got a bucket full of water and you look down and all of a sudden the bucket's almost empty and you're going, what's going on? You have no way of controlling it. And so you can't go back. A lot of people will go out and they'll spend, and they say, I'll keep it in my head. I don't know about you, but my head leaks. I needed to have it on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And so when you have a budget, you can look at your budget and it will control your spending. But if you don't have a budget, then it's like driving down the street. Can you imagine driving down I-5 or I-95, whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, at 100 miles an hour on a rainy day, and there were no lines on the highway?
Yeah.
How would you feel?
Yeah. Wow.
You feel very uncomfortable and you would feel like you were in danger. But those lines are there not to restrict you from having fun, but to give you a safe path to follow to get you to where you want to go safely.
So what is a budget and how does one go about setting a budget? Is it you take 100% of your income and you budget out every bit, or is there a room for like having some fun and play money? So talk about a bit more about how you create your own budget based on your income.
What you simply do is you take out, first of all, start with how much you make, what you have coming in. Then list all the things that you have, starting with mortgage, food, gas, utilities, hopefully insurance, all those different things that you pay out, and you make a list of them. Then you total them up. And then you subtract that from what you have coming in, which we call income. You subtract it from that, and that'll tell you basically where you are. That's the basic part of starting a budget. It's just simply start with how much you make, and I call it, this is what you net. I'm not talking about your gross, because most people, when they look at their gross compared to what they actually bring home, which is your net, it's really gross. So that's why I say work with your net. That's the income in hand that you have to work with. And then subtract all those items from how much you're bringing in, and it will tell you exactly where you are.
So let's say, just as an example, let's say a person earns $10,000 a month net. And this would be like the whole household income, maybe from mom and from dad or from husband and wife. They make $10,000 after all the taxes are taken out. And then let's say that they have $7,500 between mortgage payments, car payments, school loans, credit cards, debts, all of the groceries, power bills, utility. So what do they do then with that additional 2,500 that they have? Is that play money? Is that investment money? What do you do with the extra money outside of the budget?
The first thing I would tell you to do, my first thing is before you do anything, because I'm a Christian and I love God, and I know that God's financial system works better than anything that Wall Street can come up with. The first thing that you do is tithe. That's 10% right off the top.
10%?
10%. And so if that's 10,000, that means 1,000 right off the top. Now, and I'll hopefully explain that later, but getting back to your question, what do you do with that other money? First of all, you take another 10% and you hopefully have a financial planner. Find a good financial planner, invest that money, let it grow for you. You take another, so that's 20%. So now you're left with 80%. So now you want to take some of that, I would say 20% of that, put it away for vacation. Put it away for going on a trip. Put it away, because all work and no play makes Jack and Sally a dull person. You need time to recuperate. You need time to spend with your family. Also, you need to make sure that you have money saved up. Have a savings account. Put a certain percentage. If you're married, you and your spouse, if you're single, you sit down, and if you're single, I would say get with somebody that you have confidence in, whether it's a mom, dad, whether it's a grandparent, whether it's an uncle, or someone that you know that financially they have good sound principles and you have confidence in, if you're a single person and young, and ask their advice. But you start putting that money away and letting it grow for you. And don't spend everything that you have. That's the last thing you want to do. But if you start off doing those basic things, then you should be in really, really good shape down the road.
Okay, and you talked about financial planning. I know that you pride yourself, you're not a financial planner, but you are a budgeting coach, a financial coach. So talk about the difference between what you do as a coach, helping people kind of get ahead in this game, versus what a financial planner does.
All right, great question. What I do is, the reason I'm a financial coach and not a financial planner, number one, I didn't want to go at my age, I did not want to go out and get my license for, I think it's Series 63. But what I wanted to do was to help the average person develop a plan where they can create income, get out of debt, get back on course, and have money to go see a financial planner. One of the things I found with financial planners when I was a young man and I was trying to find out is they would talk over my head. I mean, they were very smart people. They knew exactly what they were talking about. The problem was I had no idea what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And so my thing is, and I learned this from a financial planner, by the way, my thing is to make it very simple. And most people don't have a budget because they're afraid of it, because they don't know how to do it. So what I decided to do is I created a system where I'll sit down with a person, talk to them, because see, money is not about dollars and cents. Money is about you, your personality, who you are, how you do things. What is your model? Meaning, what did you learn at an early age about money? Did you have an aunt who saved her money and really did well and would very seldom spend anything? Did your mom and dad, were they spendthrifts? Did they spend a lot of money? Who's that person that influenced you at a young age that you said to yourself, I want to be like them when I grow up? Because once I determine that, then I can determine what's the best plan for you going forward in order to be financially independent. And I set it up so all you have to do is you go in, you put in the date, you put in the amount, and the system does the rest. And all you have to do is follow it, just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and just follow the step. And that way you can sit down within an hour put everything that you need to do, and get up and go do what you love to do best.
And that system becomes the lines that keeps the road, your car on the road, it sounds like.
In any kind of weather.
Wow, I love it. I love it. You talked about your strong faith as a Christian. How and when and where did God come into your heart? Was this something that your father taught you as a young child? Talk about your faith, where that came from, and how that guides you today.
Well, as a young boy, my mom and my dad used to always take us to church. And like I said, my mom passed when I was 5. And so I remember I used to have a little hat with a feather in it that we used to wear every Sunday. And my mom passed, and I remember I was about 6 years old, and I was coming home from church one day, and I took the hat off, and I threw it down through the woods as far as I possibly could. And when my dad asked me what happened to my hat, of course, I didn't tell him that. I told him, I don't know, I lost it, because I hated that hat. And I didn't go to church for many years, but I knew of God. But when I was blowing debt in 1988, and my wife and we bought our quote unquote dream home, and that dream turned into a nightmare. We ended up $800 a month in 1988, $800 a month in debt. We both had good jobs. He was a flight attendant, I was a planner, but a deficit of $800 every month. And so that was a lot of stress. And I had read a book about tithing. And I thought, I never heard of this. And I was like, I wonder how this works. And so a guy on the job, he was the highest paid construction supervisor in the entire shipyard. And he happened to be African American. And he was the only African American construction supervisor. And I remember I was out in my yard one day, and I was cutting grass and on my riding lawnmower. And this guy comes driving by in this beautiful Continental, and he had this beautiful wife, and I saw them, and they were just driving through the neighborhood, and she was laughing and having such a good time. And then I recognized who it was. So I wanted to learn from him. I wanted to learn what he knew, so I could get promoted on the job and have that kind of lifestyle. Because my wife wasn't laughing at the time. I can guarantee you that. Because we were blowing bubbles in debt. She was not laughing. I was not something she was smiling at. And so I wanted that. And he came into my office one day talking to a coworker, and it was a friend of his, and it was my coworker. And I heard him talking about God. So then we had trailers that we had on the ship. And so he walked out of the trailer, out of the office, and was going back down to the pier. And I followed him out. And I asked him, I said to him, hey, excuse me, Ron, I heard you talking to Manny about God. I said, you guys go to the same church? And he said, yeah. And I said, but you guys talk differently. And he said, oh, that's Manny. He never put him down, anything like that. And then he told me about this Christmas play, because it was close to Christmas time, that was at the church that they went to. And his wife was the one who wrote the play. And he gave me 4 tickets. He said, why don't you and your wife come and, bring a couple people with you. Here's 4 tickets. We'd love to have you. Well, the only reason I was going was get next to him. I didn't want to go to church. I just wanted to get in good with him. And so he never told me it was the largest church in the city. And so we walked into the doors in this beautiful church, all these beautiful decorations. And they had this Christmas play. Anybody remember the movie Stir Crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, Gene Wilder. You remember the white bald-headed guy in prison? When he was singing, his voice sounded angelic, and it just spread throughout the prison. There was one guy in this play. He sounded exactly like that guy, and he looked like it. His voice was beautiful. And so when the pastor did the altar call, I said, you know what? I'm going to go give my life to Christ.
Wow.
But I was afraid of what people thought of the 2 people that I invited, my neighbors. I was afraid of what they would think of me. I was one of those Jesus freaks.
Yeah.
So I sat there. And the pastor did the altar call again. And I was like, I don't know. And so I sat there. So then the pastor said, you know, Jesus said, if you'll deny me before man, I'll deny you before the Father.
Wow.
And so I jumped up and ran down front, right? Gave my life to Christ. No, I sat there like a bump on a log. And I thought to myself, oh man, I really blew it. I should have gone. I didn't. And then he said it one more time. And I jumped up and I said, you know what? I don't care what none of these people think. I'm giving my life to Christ. And so
Wow.
that night I gave my life to Christ. Now here's the miracle, because see, I had it all designed that after we went to this play, my neighbors and I, who were friends, we were going to the local mountain jacks and have dinner and drinks. You know, Johnny Walker Red, Coke, Johnny Walker Red, Scotch, whatever. And so when we got to the restaurant, they asked me what did I want to drink. Normally I would say Johnny Walker Red and Coke, which is a Scotch. But something said in my mind said, the Bible says don't be drunk. And by the time I figured that out, it's going to be too late. I've never drank a drop of liquor since.
Oh my goodness. Oh
That
my
was the
goodness.
first miracle. And so then I went to that church for about a month. And I told my friend, I said, this church is way too big for me, because it was like 1,000 people there. And I said, so he told me about another church that a friend of his was starting, and he was a retired banker. He was the vice president of Chase Manhattan in New York, and he had retired, and he was a pastor, and he had opened up this church, and it was about maybe 30 people there, brand new congregation. And so I went there, and I thought, wow, I'm in debt. He's a pastor. He's a banker. I got it made.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I talked to him about tithing. And he explained it to me. And I was like, okay.
Because you're already $800 negative, right? You're
Yeah,
800.
I'm already $800 negative.
There's no room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now you want me to give 10% of what I don't have. Okay, so then I talked to what I call my spiritual big brother, who sent me there. Talked to him about it, and he took a couple hours, explained it to me. And I remember going home and I sat down at my desk and I looked at all the bills and I pulled out a pad and I said, Lord, I said, I still don't understand this tithing thing. And so I didn't know it was the voice of the Holy Spirit then, but the voice said to me, I said, how can I do 10%? Because the only way I can do 10% was to stop my 401k. Back then, they matched you dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
So any financial planner will tell you, if they're matching you dollar for dollar, you don't give that up. And so I said, that's the only way I could do it, to stop my 401k. And so Psalms 50:15 came to me. I don't know nothing about the Bible. I didn't even know a Psalms 50:15 existed, but it says this: call upon me in your day of trouble, and I will deliver you, and you will give me the glory.
Wow.
And I said, okay, God, deal. You're going to get me out of this mess, and all I got to do is tell people you did it, deal. So God did his part, and that's why I'm doing my part today and the rest of my life.
And what year was that? How many years ago?
That was 1990.
1990. So that's like 33 years.
Yes.
Wow. Amazing. Congratulations.
It's been an amazing ride. It's nothing like it. When you do it God's way, it's nothing like it.
So let's dive into the book, because you use God in the title of your book. Your book is titled In God We Trust, Dollar and Cents. What was the inspiration behind writing the book, and where did that title come from?
Well, the inspiration behind writing was simply, like I said, I made that commitment to God that night. Oh, by the way, that night I made that commitment to God. Now I had to go downstairs and tell my wife what I just did. Well, now I'm going to give 10% to the preacher that we don't have.
Yeah.
Okay,
That
so
money that you
I
were
can't tell
planning
you
on
what
going
she told
shopping
me.
with. Yeah.
You know, but the bottom line is, because I was on this debt program, I went to debt counseling, I couldn't afford it. They kicked me out of the program because I couldn't afford it. And so I went back to them and I talked to the manager there, and she let me back in the program. It was a 4-year program, and God got us out of debt within a year and a half. We were
Mm,
totally debt free except for mortgage.
wow.
Just following and tithing. Tithing absolutely works.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And so the things that I've learned over the years, I wanted to share it with other people. And I remembered when I had a blood clot back in 2004 when I came out here, and I was over at Ballard Hospital, and they were arguing back and forth whether they should send me back to Bremerton or put me in the hospital in Ballard, because with blood clots, if they move, it can kill you instantly. And so they stood there and they kept going back and forth with the people here at Harrison and the Ballard Hospital and the doctors for almost 2 hours. So I said to them, I said, you know what? What I'm going to do, my wife and I are going to get in the car. We're going to get on the ferry. We're going back to Bremerton, because I could have dropped dead standing here listening to you guys for the last 2 hours. But my life is in God's hands, so I'm going back. And I thought, if something were to happen to me, all the things that God has taught me in these last, at that time, like 14 years, would go with me. I need to put it in a book where other people can have it, because it's for the body of Christ.
Wow. Wow. Our guest today is Frank Reed. His book is titled In God We Trust, Dollars and Cents, and then subtitle Money Management Principles for Success, and also Debt is Not Your Destiny. To follow along online or to learn more, you can go to bottomlineministries.org. Again, bottomlineministries.org. And on the back of the book, it says there are many things that can hinder or devastate a person's dream. One of the most common but least talked about is debt. So I want to ask you this question. What does the Bible say about money, and why is debt such a negative thing?
That is another negative thing, because debt puts people into bondage. And I think it's Proverbs 22:6-7. It says, the borrower becomes a slave to the lender. It says, train up a child in the way they should go, and then when they get older, they will not stray from it. For the borrower becomes a slave to the lender. And people might say, well, I'm nobody's slave. I say, really? You don't believe that? Well, let me ask you a question. If you're nobody's slave, then are you living in the home that you want to live in? Do your kids go to the school that you want them to go to? Can your child go to the college that you want them to go to? Do you eat where you want to eat when you go to a restaurant? When you go to a restaurant, do you read the menu from the right to the left or from the left to the right? Meaning, do you look at the price first, or do you look at what the actual meal is? And that will determine to you whether you're being controlled. When you want to go on vacation, what is the first thing you think about? That I want to go to Maui and hang out with Patrick? Or, wow, how much is it going to cost for me to go to Maui and hang out with Patrick? What is controlling you? Money controls everything you do. And people talk about money all the time. And they talk about one or two things: how much they have or how much they don't have.
So what is a covenant, and why is it so important?
Well, most people, you've heard people say, well, why should I get married? It's just a contract. Well, marriage is not a contract. Marriage is a covenant. And the difference between a covenant and a contract, when you sit down with an attorney and you have him to write up a contract on your behalf, everything in that contract benefits you. Think about it. All of us on this line today has cell phones. Have you ever read your contract that you have with Verizon or your cell carrier? Everything in that contract benefits them. But a covenant is what you give away. If I make a covenant between, say, for instance, Mary and I, what a covenant says is what I'm willing to give Mary, and Mary will state what she's willing to give me.
Mm,
That's the difference between a covenant and a covenant and a contract. Because a contract protects your benefit, a covenant is something that you're giving away to someone else.
very good. So then how and where does an offering fit into this? And what's the difference between an offering and tithing?
Well, a lot of people, that's a great question because a lot of people don't know, and they sit in church every Sunday, do not know that there's a difference between an offering and tithing. Tithing is 10%. The Bible says the tithe is holy, it belongs to the Lord. A lot of have you ever heard the term, I pay my tithes or I
Yeah,
give my tithe?
yeah.
Well, that's technically is not true. You cannot pay your tithe because what you're doing is returning to God what belongs to Him. For every dollar you make, let me ask you a question. Who gives you the ability to do what you do for a living?
Mm,
God. Who gives you the strength to do what you do for a living? God. Who made that job or even that profession available to you so you could go there and do what you do for a living? God. Well, He provides all these things for you. Plus, He wakes you up in the morning, gives you the very breath that's in your lungs, and all this. And He says to you, for every dollar you make, all I'm asking you to do is return to me 10 cents. It's 10 cents of that dollar. And when
mm.
you bring it to the Lord, then He puts a covering, it's like an umbrella over the 90% that's left. And I can tell you that that 90% will go further with Him than that 100% would ever go without Him.
Mm, mm.
Now, offering, on the other hand, is whatever you decide that you want to give to the Lord. And that's, for me, it's like, God, I'm so grateful for the family you've given me. I'm so grateful for the health you've given me. I'm so grateful, Father, that I can be here looking at the mountains and looking at the water. I'm so grateful for my children. I'm grateful for opportunities and doors that you open. Father, I love you so much. I just want to give this to you. So I decide how much that is.
So
Or the
sometimes you
tithe
say
is decided.
tithing might be 10%, but an offering could be above and beyond the 10%.
Yes, it can be above and beyond the 10%. Absolutely. And here's the thing. The more you give to God, the more He gives back to you. And you don't do it because you're trying to get from God. Let's say, for instance, when your kids were 10 years old and you've been telling them they have chores they have to do, but they go above and beyond doing that. They wash the car, they cut the grass, they clean the windows, and you come home and you're like, oh, what's the first thing you think about doing for your child?
Yeah.
Right? You think about what I can do for them because you're so proud of what they've done. Because
Mm,
they've done all this, you didn't even ask them, but you're so
mhm.
proud of what they've done, and you're thinking, man, yeah, well, they got a birthday coming up. I want to get that bike they've been telling me about, or I want to get that stereo he's been asking me about. I want to get that dress that she's was looking at in the store. You want to give. When you love God and you realize how much God has done for you, you want to give. But the thing about it is you can't outgive God. When you give, God gives it back to you. It's like playing catch. God throws you the ball, you throw the ball back to Him. God throws you the ball, you throw the ball back to Him. But each time God throws the ball back to you, it's bigger than the ball you threw to Him.
So here's a question about offering. If you see an organization, a family, someone in need within your community, is it okay to give to them directly? Or do you have to give through the church and then hope the church can reach back to them? So what's your take on just giving people when you see a need? And can you do that? And should you do that?
Okay, great question. Here's number one, broke people can't give. Jesus said the poor will be with you always. Well, why would Jesus leave the poor with the poor? Because if both of y'all are broke, how can you benefit each other?
Yeah.
You are blessed to be a blessing. Offering that I was talking about, you're giving that to your local church where you're fed, where you go to get fed, get your inspiration, get where you spend your time. That goes to your local church. But then you have more left where if you see someone in need, you can give to them. When you see that single mom and she needs a car, see, this is where I believe the church needs to grow. In the church, when I say church, the people of the church, not the building,
Yeah.
where they need to grow. When you see that single mom and she's catching a bus trying to get to work every day and provide for her family, wouldn't it be great if you could just take her and say, one day say, come on, I want you to go with me, and take her down to the local car lot and buy her a really late model, nice car, or even a new car, and say, here, God loves you, and give her the keys to that, paid for. Whole different mindset, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's where God wants us to be. He wants to, when you see a homeless person, wouldn't it be great to be able to put them up in a hotel for at least a month to 6 months and help them get their life back on track?
Yeah.
Remember the Good Samaritan? He picked the guy up out of the ditch, put him on his animal, took him to the inn, and told the innkeeper, whatever he needs, give it to him. I'll pay for it when I get back.
Wow. Wow.
Same concept. So yes, I believe that you should, because God will give you enough when you obey his financial plan to give to others, because it's a part of the Abrahamic covenant. You are blessed to be a blessing.
So what is a good stewardship? Is this what we're talking about?
Yes, because if you see, remember the children of Israel and God sent a manna from heaven? And it's called bread from heaven. Supernaturally, every day it came down. You know, God sent manna from heaven, but he didn't go pick it up for them. They had to do that. And if you read the Bible, it'll tell you that each person were to only get 2 ohms. An ohm is basically a quart. 2 quarts each person for each person in the family. And if you got more than that, the next day it would have worms in it, it would rot.
Mm.
And what God was simply trying to teach the Israelites, not to worry, that he would provide their daily bread.
Mm.
But see, you've got to be a good steward. You can't spend everything you get your hands on. That's why you got to go back to what I call a FPS, a financial positioning system, basically known as a good old-fashioned budget. And the reason I don't use the word budget is because when people hear the word budget, it's like the word diet. What's the first 3 letters in the word diet?
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to do it. So they automatically shut down. But an FPS, a financial positioning system, is like a GPS. It identifies where you are, identifies to you how to get to where you want to go, and gets you there safely.
So how and where does setting personal goals and financial goals fit into this? I mean, is that maybe what the FPS system is? Is part of it is goal
FPS system is just budgeting. It's just having everything in your budget. You know exactly how much you have coming in. You know exactly how much you have going out. You know where you want to put your how much you want to save, how much you want to put for vacation, how much you want to put for your child's education. All those buckets, everything is in order and it's lined up, because when you write things down, they take on their own life.
Mm.
And that's why you should have written goals.
Wow.
It takes on its own life. It starts, your brain, your subconscious mind starts coming up with ways to fulfill your dream.
So what do you want people to know and to learn as a result of reading your book?
I want them to know that God has a financial plan. I want them to know about God's benefit package. And God's benefit package, you know, it's like when you go on a job. If you go on a job, you get a new job, and you have 5 kids, and that job is going to pay you $150,000 a year, but no medical. Do you know you can still be broke?
Yeah.
Because one medical incident can wipe you totally out if you don't have any medical coverage. So you want to know what's in that benefit package before you accept that amount. You want to know what the vacation is, what you want to know what the medical is, you want to know what the retirement plan is. Well, how come we don't ask that when we think about salvation? What's God's benefit package? And it's in Psalms 103, the first 5 verses. He heals all your diseases. He crowns you with love and compassion. He gives you the heart's desires. and he renews your youth like the eagle.
Mm. Wow. I love it.
It's all right there. It's all that right there, his benefit package. And to know that not only do you have that, but you have eternal life. When I draw my last breath, you know, I'm north of 60 now. As of July 7th, I'm north of 60.
Okay.
When I draw my last breath, where will I spend eternity? Eternity is not a question. You're going into eternity regardless. The question is, where will you spend it? And I don't know about you, but I want to spend my life, eternity with Christ, live forever. But on this earth, I want to be a blessing to others. When they see Frank Reed, 1953 dash, whatever that date is, I want my dash to say that I love people, I try to help people and make their lives better.
So that would take you to the next point, that if you could earn more money, clear your debt, create abundance in your life, then you'd have even more abundance to be a blessing.
Absolutely.
And is there anything wrong with becoming a millionaire? And there's that old saying that says a rich person has as much chance of getting into heaven as something going through the eye of a needle. You've heard that before. So what about those people? Yeah, yes. Joel Osteen has a net worth of $100 million, and a lot of people think, well, he's making too much money, he shouldn't be doing that. Talk about what's your take on people making lots and lots and lots of money? Because I kind of feel the more money they make, the more they can tithe, the more that they can, make offerings. So what's your take on that?
Well, like I said earlier, Jesus said, the poor will be with you always. Well, if both of y'all are broke, what's the sense of leaving the poor with me?
Yeah.
And so as far as making a lot of money, isn't it amazing that nobody questions how much money Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or people like that make? That's okay. If you make money, LeBron James, most basketball stars make over 200 million in a 5-year period. And most of them aren't even 30 years old. $200 million. Nobody will have, they're great basketball players. They're great football players. Who was it? Kansas City Chiefs. What's the quarterback say?
Pat Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes. Great kid, talented, gifted. His last contract was for $500 million. Anybody said he made too much money? No. The only time that's said is mostly for the preacher, or if you're a Christian, you're not supposed to do that. Because Satan, the devil, our enemy, doesn't want us to make money, because he knows that if we live life according to God's word, we're going to go out and make other people's lives better. And that's the last thing he wants to do.
Yes, that makes sense. The more that you make, the more that you can provide abundance.
Absolutely.
Okay, we've seen the US dollar, ever since it got off the gold, system, we've seen the US dollar over time become less and less and less valuable. We now have a new system around the country, around the world, called BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. There's all kinds of turbulence in the marketplace. Many people are now investing in gold and silver as a result, because they think that there's a greater return on gold and silver. What's your advice on gold and silver? What's your take, and how would you protect yourself against the diminishing dollar?
Well, there is a financial storm coming our way, period, around the world.
Yep.
Excuse me. So let me ask you a question. Now that many of you on the line on this interview has heard me say this before. Where does true wealth come from? Meaning, the Bible says, the earth, in the Psalms, it says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So where does gold come from?
The earth,
right? Where does silver come from?
The earth.
Where do diamonds come from?
The earth.
Where does precious metals come from? Where does oil come from? Everything that we consider true wealth comes from the earth, and it belongs to who? The Lord.
Yeah.
So the bottom line is, God created the economy. Man distorted the economy. So it doesn't matter whether you have silver, you have gold. If the Bible says, what good is it for man to gain the whole world and lose his soul?
Yeah.
So you can have all these things and you don't have God. Can you imagine having $100 million or $200 million or $500 million and not one of your kids will speak to you?
Yeah.
No, not one person could not one person would take the time of day to have a cup of coffee with you. But you have millions and literally billions of dollars. What good would it be?
Yeah.
So my thing is, number one, learn God's system. Give your life to Christ. Ask Jesus to come into your life and take over your life and start learning God's system. Because that, and when you do tithe, as you tithe, like I said, it's an umbrella. It'll put a hedge, no matter what the world systems does. Because Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. And as a Christian, I'm an ambassador of Christ. And just like the ambassador from the United States, if he goes to Ukraine and Ukraine's economy is in shambles, does that affect the ambassador of the United States? No, because he's not from Ukraine, he's from America. When I'm from another kingdom, so no matter what happens in say the United Kingdom, it doesn't affect my protection, it doesn't affect my provision, it doesn't affect my economy because I'm from another kingdom. So no matter what happens in this system, when I'm in God's system, I'm protected.
Wow. Wow. All right. So as we finish up, I'm going to ask you a question about Unstoppable. But before we do that, any last things that you want to share? What's the best financial advice that you can give people on all of what we talked about? Are there 2 or 3 or 4 things that maybe you really want to drive home?
Yes, the first thing is start tithing. If you have a local church, start tithing. Just do it. 10% right off the top. Just write the check or deposit it. And all you're doing is financing the gospel. God is asking you to partner with him. He's giving you the privilege of partnering with him. And when you start tithing, you will find how faithful God is in your finances. But most and foremost, give your life to Christ. Give your life to Christ. Ask him to come in and take over your life. Listen, there's a Psalms 37, it says, once I was young, but now I'm old. I ain't never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread. Meaning God will provide for you all the days of your life, and he'll also provide for your children's children. So those are 2 main things. And the other thing, as far as the economy is concerned, I'm encouraging people, if you have whatever you have, but I'm using $5,000 to $10,000, I'm telling you to take that $5,000, $10,000 cash, put it somewhere safe. Because if the economy folds, it takes them 2 months, 3 months to reset, and they lock down all of the banks. What are you going to do when you put your debit card in and it doesn't work? What are you going to do when your credit card doesn't work? How are you going to be able to get anything? So I'm encouraging people to do that, because remember, do you remember just about, what was it, 2 months ago, where the bank shut down and people couldn't get their money?
Yeah.
And then another bank shut down and they bought that bank out. Other banks ran to their aid to help them. But yet they tell we have a strong economy. If we have such a strong economy, why did those banks fail?
Yeah.
Come on, people, wake up. Smell the coffee. See what's going on around us. The world is in chaos. The world is in turmoil. The financial system is very fragile. So you want to put God first in your finances, but I'm telling you what you can do. You can take 5,000, if maybe you only have 500 or 1,000, whatever you can do, keep cash on hand in a safe place. I wouldn't go around telling the neighbors where it is. That's not the smart thing to do. Okay, but put it in a safe place where if you need it, you can get to it.
Very good. Very good. Where's the best place people can purchase a copy of your book, In God They Trust, dollars and cents?
The best place to purchase it is right on my website. That way you can be assured of getting a signed copy. But you can purchase it at Amazon or any basic place where you can purchase books. You can get a copy of it.
In God We Trust, dollars and cents, go to bottomlineministries.org. How about if someone's interested in a complimentary consultation, they want to hire you as a coach to learn more about your services? What's the best way for people to reach out and connect with you to do a session with you to see if you're a good fit for them and they're a good fit for you?
Again, go to bottomlineministries.org and just go right there under, forget, gosh, where it is right now. But you'll see it right on my website, and just click on it. There's a form that you fill out and send it to me, and I will get back to you. And we can do a complimentary consultation to see if it's a good fit.
Very good. Bottomlineministries.com. Okay, last question.
.org.
I'm sorry, bottomlineministries.org. Last question. Mary West is our producer. She does such an amazing job orchestrating these incredible interviews, and what a blessing that you have been today. So thank you for your time. But we call Mary, as you know, Mary Unstoppable West, or MUW. So how does Frank Reed define the word unstoppable?
I define the word unstoppable as Mary West, because she is truly unstoppable. I've known Mary for several years now, and she is amazing. She's always trying to help people build their business. She's always giving, and she always has this beautiful, contagious smile and full of energy. And, you know, I love being a part of the Mary West Network. And I encourage any business, small business owner, if you're don't have a small business, but you're thinking about starting a small business, contact Mary. I tell you, she'll connect you with people, cause you to grow. I remember one young lady that was selling books, and first name is Janae. And Janae, I remember when she first came to the Mary West Network, she would stand with her note in her hand, and she would literally tremble. And now she's $1 million seller in her company. And it's all a part of the Mary West Network and the confidence that she was able to obtain by being a part of the Mary West Network. And I am so grateful to be a part of the Mary West Network and have Mary as a dear friend.
Very good. Excellent. So Frank, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you so very much. Everybody go out and get a copy of his book, In God We Trust, dollars and cents. Go to bottomlineministries.org. I'm going to give you a big hand. Thank you so much. Hopefully you can stick around for a few moments for a Q&A.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right.